6 months earlier, I stood in the freshly painted living room of our new home in Oakwood Estates, watching through the window as moving trucks unloaded our belongings. After 15 years on the force and my recent promotion to chief of police in the neighboring town of Riverdale, this move represented everything I had worked for. A safe neighborhood with good schools for my son, Tyler. A fresh start after losing my wife to cancer 2 years ago. A chance to just be Michael Davis, single dad instead of Chief Davis for once. My decision to keep my profession private was deliberate. Law enforcement officers often face unique challenges in their personal lives, neighbors who either avoid you or constantly ask for legal advice, children of officers singled out at school, and the inability to ever truly leave the job behind. I wanted Tyler to make friends without the weight of my badge hovering over him. I wanted barbecues where conversation did not revolve around recent crime statistics. I wanted normal. The real estate agent had mentioned the HOA during our closing. Oakwood Estates has one of the most active homeowners associations in the county, she explained while sliding the thick rule book across the table. They keep property values high, but some residents find them a bit stringent. I nodded, barely skimming the document before signing. After 20 years enforcing actual laws, I did not anticipate any trouble following rules about lawn height and trash can placement. Tyler adapted quickly to our new environment. He was 10 years old, bright and kind, with his mother's gentle nature and resilience. Our morning routine fell into comfortable rhythm, breakfast together, packing his lunch, then walking him to the bus stop 3 houses down. I would wait with him until the bus arrived, then head back home to change from my casual clothes into my uniform, which I kept carefully hidden in the back of my closet. To my neighbors, I simply mentioned working in public service in the next town over. The first neighborhood newsletter arrived 2 weeks after we moved in. It featured a column from the HOA president, Victoria Winters, detailing recent violations and reminding residents of seasonal decoration restrictions. Her photo showed a middle-aged woman with an immaculate blonde bob and a smile that did not reach her eyes. I thought little of it at the time, placing the newsletter in the recycling bin after a quick glance. One morning in late September, while walking Tyler to the bus stop, I noticed a woman standing at the end of her driveway 3 houses down, clipboard in hand, making notes while staring pointedly at a neighbor's Halloween decorations that had apparently gone up too early according to HOA regulations. Even from a distance, I recognized her from the newsletter photo. Victoria Winters, though I would soon learn that neighbors had given her another name behind closed doors. Karen. She did not acknowledge us as we passed, too focused on documenting the offense of plastic skeletons appearing before the HOA-approved Halloween decoration window. Tyler whispered to me after we passed, "Dad, the kids at school say her house is haunted by the ghosts of dead plants that were the wrong height." I laughed, but made a mental note to be extra vigilant about our own lawn maintenance. From behind her pristine white curtains, Victoria watched the neighborhood with calculating eyes. I did not know it then, but she had already noticed us, the new single father and his son who did not quite fit into her vision of Oakwood Estates perfection. She was already making notes about our comings and goings, already planning how best to enforce her interpretation of the rules upon us. But for now, we existed in peaceful ignorance of the storm brewing behind those curtains, enjoying our new beginning in what I still believed was the perfect neighborhood for my son. The thick HOA manual sat unopened on my bookshelf for weeks after moving in. I had intended to review it thoroughly, but between settling into my new position as chief and helping Tyler adjust to his new school, it remained untouched. That changed the day I found the first violation notice tucked into our front door. Violation: unapproved wind chimes creating noise pollution. Reference HOA Manual Section 7.3, Exterior Decorations and Noise. Please remove within 48 hours to avoid $50 fine. I stood on my front porch, notice in hand, staring at the small ceramic wind chimes Tyler had made at summer camp, a memento from the last vacation we took with his mother before her diagnosis. Noise pollution seemed an extreme characterization for the gentle tinkling sound they made in the breeze. Nevertheless, I took them down that evening, not wanting to cause trouble. At the bus stop the next morning, another parent approached me hesitantly. "I see you got a visit from the violation ferry," she said, nodding toward my now chime-free porch. "Welcome to Oakwood Estates. I am Sarah, by the way. My daughter Emma is in 4th grade with Tyler." Sarah became my unofficial guide to the unwritten social dynamics of the neighborhood. Over the next few days, she pointed out houses that had received violations, some for infractions so minor I could barely detect them with my trained observer's eye. The Johnsons got fined because their trash can was visible from the street for more than 4 hours after collection, she explained one morning. And the Patels had to repaint their entire house because the shade of beige they chose was apparently 2 shades off from the approved color palette. The bus stop became an informal gathering place for parents to exchange warnings and advice. "Victoria is on the prowl for autumn wreaths that exceed the 20-inch diameter limit," one father whispered. "She measured the Henderson's wreath with a tape measure yesterday." "Does she actually have the authority to issue these fines?" I asked, my law enforcement background making me skeptical. "Technically, we all signed agreements when we bought our homes," Sarah explained. "But no one expected her to enforce every minute detail. The previous HOA president was reasonable. Since Victoria took over last year, it has been like living under a microscope." I began to notice patterns. Victoria appeared to target certain households more than others. Single parents, families with young children, homes with elderly residents, those least likely to fight back. It was selective enforcement, a tactic I had seen corrupt officers use throughout my career. The parallels were unsettling. 3 weeks after the wind chime incident, I experienced my first direct encounter with Victoria. I was raking leaves when her shadow fell across my lawn. "Mr. Davis," she said, clipboard already in hand, "your mailbox lacks the required brass numbers. Section 5.2 clearly states that all house numbers must be displayed in brass Garamond font, size 16. I straightened slowly, maintaining the calm demeanor that had served me well during countless tense situations throughout my career. "Good morning, Victoria. I was not aware of that requirement. I will order the proper numbers today." She seemed momentarily taken aback by my lack of resistance. "See that you do. We have standards in Oakwood Estates that must be maintained." Her eyes narrowed as she studied my face. "You seem familiar. Have we met before?" "I do not believe so," I replied neutrally. "I work in public service in Riverdale." "Public service," she repeated, making a note on her clipboard. "Well, regardless of your occupation, the rules apply equally to everyone." She turned to leave, then paused. "Your son walks to the bus alone sometimes. You should know that unaccompanied minors at bus stops are subject to Section 12.8 regulations." The veiled threat toward Tyler sent a warning signal through my professional instincts. As Victoria walked away, I realized this was not simply about mailbox numbers or wind chimes. She was establishing dominance, making it clear that nothing in Oakwood Estates escaped her notice, especially not my son. Tuesday mornings were always hectic at our house. I had standing department meetings at 8:30 a.m., which meant leaving earlier than usual. Tyler was old enough and responsible enough to walk the short distance to the bus stop alone these days, though I typically preferred to accompany him. Our street was quiet, with only 3 houses between ours and the corner where the bus picked up the neighborhood children. We had practiced the route dozens of times, and Tyler knew to call me immediately if there were any problems. This particular Tuesday started like any other. I made breakfast while Tyler packed his backpack, double-checking his science project was safely tucked inside the folder. "Remember, I have my big meeting today," I reminded him as he finished his cereal. "So you need to head to the bus on your own. Call me when you get there, okay?" "I know, Dad," Tyler replied with the slight eye roll that all 10-year-olds seem to master. "It is literally 3 houses away. I can see the bus stop from our front yard." I tousled his hair and helped him into his jacket. "Just being a dad. Have a great day at school. Love you, buddy." "Love you too, Dad," he said, heading out the door. I watched from the window as he made his way down our front path, backpack bouncing slightly with each step. Once he rounded the corner, I turned my attention to preparing for my meeting. The shower had just started running when my phone rang. Seeing Tyler's name on the screen sent an immediate spike of adrenaline through me. "Tyler, what is wrong?" I answered, already reaching for my clothes. His voice came through shaky and distressed. "Dad, the HOA lady is here. She is taking pictures of me and saying I am breaking rules. She will not let me get on the bus." "What? Put her on the phone, Tyler," I demanded, pulling on pants with one hand while keeping the phone to my ear. "She will not talk to you. She says she needs to document everything first and then she will call you." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Dad, she is scaring me. The bus is here, but she is standing in front of me." I could hear a sharp female voice in the background. "Young man, I am conducting official HOA business. You are in violation of Section 12.8 and I need your full name for the report." "Tyler, stay on the phone with me." "I am coming right now," I said, abandoning my uniform shirt for the bathrobe hanging on the door. I clipped my badge to the pocket, not standard procedure, but this was not a standard situation. I grabbed my car keys and raced out the door, staying on the line with my son. The drive took less than 30 seconds, but what I heard over the phone during those moments made my blood boil. Victoria's voice grew increasingly hostile as she demanded Tyler's information, threatening consequences for non-compliance with HOA authority. I could hear other parents attempting to intervene and Tyler's muffled sobs. When I pulled up to the curb, the scene came into full view. The yellow school bus idled at the stop, its doors open. A small crowd of parents had gathered, several with phones raised, recording the confrontation. And there was Victoria, standing over my son, her phone pointed at his face as she photographed him, her free hand gripping the strap of his backpack to prevent him from boarding the bus. I was out of the car before it fully stopped. "Tyler," I called, and he broke away from Victoria's grip to run toward me. As I embraced him, I could feel him trembling. "Sir, you need to control your child," Victoria announced, marching toward us. "He is in direct violation of HOA Bylaw 12.8, which clearly states that minors under 12 must be accompanied by an adult at community bus stops at all times. I have been documenting his violation for the official record." The other parents fell silent as I stood to my full height, keeping one hand on Tyler's shoulder. "You were photographing my son without permission and physically preventing him from boarding his school bus." Victoria thrust her clipboard toward me. "I am the HOA president. It is my responsibility to document violations. Furthermore, your appearance is in violation of Section 3.5 regarding appropriate attire in common areas." Her eyes flicked dismissively over my bathrobe. "Tyler, go wait in the car," I said quietly, keeping my voice level despite the anger surging through me. Once he was safely away, I turned back to Victoria. "You had no right to touch my son, photograph him, or prevent him from going to school." "I have every right," Victoria retorted, her voice rising. "As president of this HOA, I am authorized to enforce all community standards. Your son was unsupervised, in violation of clearly established rules. Now I need your name and contact information for the official violation report." The bus driver called out from his seat. "Ma'am, I need to stay on schedule. These kids need to board now or they will be late for school." "They can board when I have completed my documentation," Victoria snapped without looking at him. Her attention remained fixed on me, her expression a mixture of indignation and triumph. "Now, your name for the report." At that moment, something fundamental shifted inside me. The line between my role as a father and my position as chief of police, a line I had carefully maintained since moving to Oakwood Estates, suddenly blurred beyond recognition. Victoria had crossed the one boundary no parent could tolerate. She had frightened my child and prevented him from going to school, all while invoking authority she did not legally possess. Victoria's hand remained extended, demanding my identification. Her fingernails, perfectly manicured in a shade of red that matched her lipstick, tapped impatiently against her clipboard. Behind her, I could see several parents with their phones raised, recording the confrontation. The school bus still idled at the curb, its engine rumbling as children peered through the windows at the unfolding drama. "I am waiting for your identification," Victoria repeated, her voice carrying across the now silent gathering. "As HOA president, I need to know exactly who is violating our community standards." One of the parents, Sarah, stepped forward cautiously. "Victoria, maybe we should let the kids get to school first and discuss this later." Victoria turned sharply. "This is official HOA business, Sarah. Please do not interfere." Her attention swiveled back to me. "Now, sir, your identification, or I will be forced to call the authorities to handle this situation." I felt a cold calm settle over me, the same focused clarity that had guided me through hostage negotiations and crisis management throughout my career. "My name is Michael Davis. I live at 247 Oakwood Drive with my son Tyler." Victoria began writing on her clipboard with swift, aggressive strokes. "And your contact information. I will need to schedule a hearing about these violations." "My contact information," I repeated slowly, "is on file with the HOA. You already have it." Her pen paused mid-stroke. "I need it for this specific violation report, and I need to know your occupation for our records." "My occupation," I said, measuring each word carefully, "is Chief of Police for the city of Riverdale." For the first time since I had encountered her, Victoria's composure faltered. Her eyebrows rose slightly before her expression hardened into disbelief. "Chief of Police? I doubt that very much. I know everyone at the Riverdale Police Department. If you were the chief, I would certainly know about it." From the corner of my eye, I could see more phones being raised among the gathered parents. Tyler watched anxiously from our car, his face pressed against the window. The bus driver checked his watch with increasing agitation. "I have been chief of police in Riverdale for 7 months," I continued calmly. "Before that, I served 15 years on the force, 5 of those as captain of detectives. And right now, you are preventing children from receiving their education while violating multiple laws regarding the photography of minors without parental consent." Victoria's face flushed, but she recovered quickly. "That is absurd. If you were really chief of police, you would not be standing here in a bathrobe. You are clearly lying to intimidate me, which is itself a violation of HOA Code Section 9.2 regarding misrepresentation. I am in my bathrobe, I replied evenly, because my son called me in distress after you confronted him, photographed him without permission, and physically prevented him from boarding his school bus. I came immediately to ensure his safety. Victoria's knuckles whitened around her clipboard. I know all the officials in this county, she insisted, her voice rising. I have connections throughout local government. If you were really chief of police, I would know. You keep saying that, I observed, yet here we are. I do not believe you, she declared, pulling out her phone. I am calling the actual police department right now to report this disturbance and your false claims of authority. Several parents exchanged glances. The tension in the air was palpable. The bus driver called out again, more urgently this time. Folks, I really need to get these kids to school. Can we please resolve this? I reached into my bathrobe pocket and withdrew my police radio. With deliberate calmness, I pressed the call button. This is Chief Davis, badge number 4729. I need a patrol unit at the corner of Oakwood Drive and Maple Street in Oakwood Estates. Non-emergency response. The radio crackled immediately. Copy that, Chief. Units 14 and 17 are in the vicinity. ETA 3 minutes. Victoria stared at the radio, momentarily speechless. Then she recovered, her eyes narrowing. Anyone can get a police radio. That proves nothing. Without breaking eye contact with her, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Captain Reynolds, Davis here. I am at my son's bus stop in Oakwood Estates. There has been an incident involving harassment of my son by a civilian claiming enforcement authority. Yes, I need official response. Thank you. I ended the call and returned the phone to my pocket. The officers will be here momentarily. In the meantime, I turned to the bus driver, please get these children to school. They have been delayed enough. The driver nodded gratefully and waved the waiting children aboard. As they climbed the steps, Victoria found her voice again, though it had lost much of its previous confidence. This is ridiculous. You cannot just call in police officers to intimidate me for doing my job. I am the HOA president. Her voice carried a note of desperation now. If you think I am going to back down because of some phone call, you are mistaken. In the distance, police sirens became audible. Victoria's eyes widened slightly as she glanced down the street. For the first time, doubt flickered across her face. That is impossible, she whispered, more to herself than to me. You cannot be. As the sound of sirens grew louder, parents began to whisper among themselves. I could hear fragments of conversation. Police chief, living here the whole time, poor Tyler. Victoria stood frozen, her clipboard clutched against her chest like a shield, her eyes fixed on the approaching police cars. You are bluffing, she said, her voice no longer carrying the same conviction. This is all some elaborate show to avoid HOA penalties. The first patrol car rounded the corner, its lights flashing but siren now silent. The second followed close behind. As they pulled to the curb, two uniformed officers stepped out and approached us with practiced professionalism. Chief Davis, the first officer said with a respectful nod, what seems to be the situation here? Chief Davis, what is the situation here? Officer Rodriguez repeated, standing at attention, his expression professionally neutral despite the unusual circumstances of finding his boss in a bathrobe at a suburban bus stop. The gathered crowd fell completely silent. Every eye shifted between the officers, Victoria and me. I could see the exact moment realization dawned on Victoria's face, the widening of her eyes, the slight parting of her lips, the sudden drain of color from her cheeks. The clipboard she had wielded so confidently now hung limply at her side. "Officers," I said, maintaining my professional demeanor despite my unconventional attire, "I need you to take witness statements regarding an incident that occurred approximately 20 minutes ago. This woman," I gestured toward Victoria, "confronted my 10-year-old son at this bus stop, photographed him without consent, physically prevented him from boarding his school bus, and demanded his personal information." Officer Garcia, the second officer, immediately took out his notepad. "Yes, Chief, we will gather statements from all witnesses." Victoria seemed to physically shrink as neighbors began to whisper among themselves. The authority she had projected only moments ago evaporated under the reality of actual law enforcement presence. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its commanding tone. "There has been a misunderstanding," she said, attempting to regain composure. "I was simply enforcing HOA rules regarding unaccompanied minors at community bus stops. I had no idea Mr. Davis was. That he was." "Chief of Police," Officer Rodriguez finished for her. "Ma'am, did you photograph a minor without parental consent?" Victoria clutched her phone tighter. "I was documenting a violation. As HOA president, I have the authority to." "HOA regulations do not supersede state laws regarding privacy and harassment," Officer Garcia interrupted calmly. "I need to see the photographs you took of the minor." As Victoria reluctantly surrendered her phone, I walked to my car and opened the door. "Tyler, I need you to tell the officers what happened this morning. Can you do that for me?" He nodded bravely, stepping out of the car. Sarah and 2 other parents approached, offering to provide their accounts as witnesses. Officer Rodriguez activated his body camera and began taking statements while Officer Garcia examined Victoria's phone, noting the multiple unauthorized photographs of my son. "Chief," Officer Rodriguez said after speaking with Tyler and the witnesses, "based on initial statements, we have grounds for charges of harassment of a minor and unlawful detention. How would you like us to proceed?" I was acutely aware of my dual role in this situation, father and law enforcement officer. To maintain ethical standards, I needed to separate these responsibilities. "I am recusing myself from direct involvement in this case due to my personal connection," I stated formally. "However, as the parent of the minor involved, I wish to press charges. Please proceed according to department protocols." Victoria's face crumpled as the reality of her situation became clear. "This is absurd. I was enforcing community standards. The HOA bylaws clearly state." "Ma'am," Officer Garcia interrupted firmly, "HOA bylaws do not grant you the authority to detain individuals, prevent children from attending school, or photograph minors without consent. These actions potentially violate several state laws." Victoria's demeanor shifted suddenly, her indignation collapsing into pleading. "Chief Davis, surely we can resolve this reasonably. I did not know who you were. If I had known you were in law enforcement, I never would have approached your son." The implication that her behavior would have been acceptable toward any other child only strengthened my resolve. "That is precisely the problem, Ms. Winters. You should not be approaching, photographing, or detaining any child, regardless of who their parent is or what position they hold." Officer Rodriguez gestured toward the patrol car. "Ms. Winters, we need you to come to the station to provide a formal statement regarding this incident." "Am I being arrested?" Victoria asked, her voice barely audible. "At this time, You are being detained for questioning regarding potential charges of harassment of a minor and unlawful detention," Officer Garcia explained, reciting her rights as he guided her toward the patrol car. The neighbors watched in stunned silence as Victoria Winters, the feared HOA president who had terrorized Oakwood Estates with her clipboard and violation notices, was escorted into the back of a police car. Her carefully maintained facade of authority had crumbled completely, revealing someone who had mistaken control for power and rules for law. As the patrol car pulled away, parents approached me one by one, some expressing relief, others sharing their own stories of intimidation by Victoria. I assured them that proper legal procedures would be followed and that my personal connection to the case would not influence the outcome. Sarah touched my arm gently. "We had no idea you were the chief of police. All this time you were just Tyler's dad to us." "That is what I wanted," I replied honestly. "For Tyler to have a normal life here, for us to be known for who we are, not what I do for a living." I looked toward my house, the badge still clipped to my bathrobe, the invisible line between my personal and professional life now permanently blurred in the eyes of my community. What had started as a typical Tuesday morning had transformed into the moment Oakwood Estates would discover that the quiet single father in house number 247 was actually Chief Michael Davis. And Victoria Winters would discover that there are consequences far more serious than HOA violations when you target the wrong person's child. The Riverdale police station hummed with its usual activity as I walked through the doors later that afternoon, now properly dressed in my uniform. Officers nodded respectfully as I passed, a few casting curious glances my way. News of the morning's events had clearly made its way through department channels. Captain Reynolds met me outside my office. "Quite a morning, Chief," he remarked, handing me a preliminary report. "Ms. Winters has been processed. Lieutenant Gomez is handling the case to avoid any conflict of interest concerns." "Thank you, Captain," I replied, scanning the document. "Have we confirmed the chain of custody for the photographic evidence?" "Yes, sir. Officer Garcia secured her phone and we have obtained a warrant to access all images taken at the bus stop. Tech is making copies now." He hesitated before adding, "She has made several calls attempting to contact the mayor and county commissioner." I nodded, unsurprised. Those connections she kept mentioning. "So far, no one is returning her calls," Reynolds noted with the slightest hint of satisfaction. "Apparently, being known as the woman who harassed the chief's son is not opening many doors." After reviewing the case files and ensuring all procedures were being followed with meticulous care, I called Tyler's school to check on him. The principal assured me he was doing well, though she suggested he might benefit from leaving early. I arranged for a trusted family friend to pick him up and stay with him until I could get home. Throughout the day, my phone buzzed continuously with notifications. The Oakwood Estates community app had exploded with activity, hundreds of comments discussing the morning's events. Screenshots showed me that within hours, Victoria's arrest had become the single most discussed topic in neighborhood history. The posts revealed a community, finding its voice after years of intimidation. "She gave us a violation for having the wrong shade of mulch last spring. Wrong shade of mulch." My daughter was terrified to play in our backyard after Victoria measured our swing set and claimed it was 3 inches too tall. She photographed my elderly mother gardening and issued a violation for unsightly kneeling in the front yard. By evening, the HOA vice president had called an emergency board meeting. I received an official email invitation, specifically requesting my attendance both as a resident and in my professional capacity. After ensuring Tyler was settled with dinner and homework, I changed into civilian clothes and walked to the community center. The meeting room was packed beyond capacity. Residents stood along walls and crowded doorways. Many nodded respectfully as I entered. Others looked away, perhaps embarrassed by their previous silence regarding Victoria's behavior. The vice president, a nervous-looking man named Robert, called the meeting to order. As you all know, this emergency session was called following this morning's incident. Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. Ms. Winters is currently unable to attend due to legal circumstances. The board wishes to express our deepest apologies to Mr. Davis and his son for what transpired. A woman in the front row stood abruptly. Not just to Mr. Davis, she said firmly, to all of us. My family has endured 2 years of harassment under Victoria's leadership. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. More residents stood, sharing their experiences. The stories varied in detail but shared a common theme: Victoria's selective enforcement, intimidation tactics, and abuses of power had affected dozens of families throughout Oakwood Estates. As the testimonies continued, Robert informed the community that the board had unanimously voted to remove Victoria from her position as president, effective immediately. They would be conducting a full review of all violation notices and fines issued under her leadership. Lieutenant Gomez called me during a break in the meeting. "Chief, I wanted to update you personally. We have confirmed multiple violations in Ms. Winters' case. In addition to the charges related to your son, we have discovered evidence of similar behaviors toward other minors in the community. The prosecutor is considering filing additional charges." When Robert reconvened the meeting, he announced the formation of a committee to review and revise HOA policies. "We need to ensure this never happens again," he stated firmly. "Effective immediately, no HOA representative will approach or photograph any minor under any circumstances. All violation notices will require documentation and board approval before issuance." The temporary restraining order was granted the following day, prohibiting Victoria from approaching Tyler or the bus stop. As the legal process unfolded, more families came forward, transforming what might have been an isolated incident into a pattern of behavior that demanded accountability. Victoria Winters was released on bail pending her court date. Her house went on the market 3 days later. Neighbors observed a moving truck arriving at night, loading furniture while the street slept. By morning, the house stood empty, the FOR sale sign the only indication that she had ever lived there. The community app buzzed with notifications when Victoria's court date was announced. Parents who had witnessed the bus stop confrontation received subpoenas to testify. The prosecutor informed me that given the evidence and multiple witness statements, a plea agreement was likely. Through it all, I maintained my professional ethics, recusing myself from any direct involvement in the case while ensuring that proper procedures were followed. As a father, I remained focused on helping Tyler process what had happened. As chief of police, I used the incident as a teachable moment for my department about the importance of respecting community members and the danger of overstepping authority. Though Victoria had left Oakwood Estates, her legacy remained, a cautionary tale of what happens when rules become weapons rather than protections. But from that negative came something positive, a community finding its collective voice and reclaiming its governance from the hands of a bully. 1 month after the incident at the bus stop, Oakwood Estates held its quarterly HOA meeting in the community center. Unlike previous meetings, which typically drew only board members and a handful of concerned residents, this one filled every available seat. The energy in the room was different, engaged, hopeful, collaborative. I had been asked to speak, not as the chief of police, but as a resident with professional insight into governance and community standards. Standing before my neighbors, I saw faces that had transformed from guarded strangers to friendly acquaintances over the past weeks. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began. "When my son and I moved to Oakwood Estates, we were looking for a community, a place to belong. What we found initially was a neighborhood living in fear of arbitrary enforcement and constant surveillance." Nods of recognition rippled through the audience. "Rules and standards serve an important purpose," I continued. "As someone who has dedicated his life to law enforcement, I understand the value of order and structure. But there is a fundamental difference between governance and tyranny. Rules should protect people, not control them. They should enhance our community, not diminish it." The newly elected HOA president, Sarah, who had been one of the first to befriend us at the bus stop, stood to present the revised HOA guidelines. The changes were substantial: a transparent violation reporting system, an appeals process for all citations, required documentation for all alleged infractions, and explicit protection for children within the community. "Most importantly," Sarah emphasized, "we have added a core value statement to our HOA charter. Every rule and enforcement action must align with these values: respect, fairness, transparency, and community well-being." Victoria Winters had her day in court the following week. As expected, she accepted a plea agreement rather than face trial. The judge sentenced her to community service hours, mandatory counseling for anger management, and a public apology to the families affected by her actions. The restraining order preventing her from contacting Tyler was extended for a full year. Her house sold quickly to a young family with twins. When they moved in, neighbors organized a proper welcome committee, bringing home-cooked meals and genuine smiles rather than clipboards and violation notices. Spring arrived in Oakwood Estates with subtle signs of community transformation. Gardens displayed more personality. Whimsical gnomes appeared alongside traditional landscaping. Children played more freely in front yards. Neighbors lingered to chat during evening walks.